You've been taught to prepare for the battle. They never told you that the real victory happens before the battlefield is even drawn. You were trained to run harder, shout louder, outsmart in the moment. But the ones who win truly win don't wait for the moment. They erase it. They remove your reaction time, your options, your will. You were raised on the myth of merit, that if you try your best, you will win. That effort and talent are enough. But you've seen it fail, haven't you? You felt that cold silence when the less capable man walked away with a victory, and you were left wondering what just happened. What happened was this: you were competing in a race. He was dismantling the stadium. This is the beginning of real strategy, not training harder, but weakening your rival's legs before the race even begins. You don't fight stronger. You make them smaller. You don't attack louder. You remove their voice. You don't win on game day. You win in the invisible hours no one else is watching. You were told to be ready, but readiness is reactive. You are not here to react. You are here to conquer. The first move, framing the field. You don't fight on equal ground. You define the ground. The average man enters a room and tries to read the tone. You enter and set it. The moment you respond to energy, you are no longer the source of it. That's where you lose. That's where the opponent sees your face twist slightly. Your eyes scan the room. Your voice waits for approval. You've already shown them you're inside the game. You're trying to win inside a system they might already control. Machiavelli wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." But fear doesn't begin with punishment. It begins with silence, with uncertainty, with the quiet suggestion that you know something they don't and you're not sharing it. Most people try to prove their intelligence. You, instead, project calculated ambiguity. You want your opponent thinking, what does he know? What is he hiding? Why isn't he reacting? Once they ask those questions, they've already broken formation. They're now in your frame. Case study: the boardroom before the war. You walk into a negotiation. Your opponent has done all the work, rehearsed points, printed documents, mentally scripted their lines. You do nothing. You ask questions they weren't prepared for. You point at what isn't on the document. You pause often. You stare too long. You make one correction to a tiny number and act like it matters. You say you're still deciding what this all means. They try to move things forward, but you're never ready. You aren't resisting. You're slowing. Slowing is a weapon. Slowing breaks rhythm. Slowing introduces doubt. While they keep playing the game they rehearsed, you are building a new game. One where your silence is louder than their proposal. One where they're no longer sure what your rules are. That's when they lose. Not because you out-argued them, but because you removed the ground they trained on. The psychology of pre-race dominance. Why does this work? Because people are obsessed with certainty. They worship the known. They fear the unseen. Most men, even the bold ones, crumble when you refuse to match their tempo. You don't laugh when they joke. You don't flinch when they provoke. You don't finish their sentences, even when you know where they're going. You simply wait. You watch. You let the space grow uncomfortable, and inside that space, their performance dies. They start adjusting, explaining more, overcompensating, revealing weaknesses they didn't even know they had. You just sit, listening, letting them betray themselves. The rule they never taught you. Here's the rule. The strongest opponent is not the one who shouts loudest. It's the one who makes you doubt yourself without saying a word. You never break their will with force. You break it with absence. Absence of energy. Absence of fear. Absence of validation. They show up ready to sprint, but you've already tied their laces together in their sleep. They were planning for the fight. You were erasing the rules of the game, and the moment they realize it, it's too late. They're not losing the race. They're running it inside your mind, and that's where the real war begins. Closing this part. This is only the first move, framing the field. Mastering presence before a single move is made. In the next part, we'll break down how to pre-program their reactions before they even occur. How to infect their expectations not with power, but with submission dressed as confidence. If you've ever wondered why the crowd listens to the man who speaks slowest, you're about to find out. The moment someone believes they understand you, they stop fearing you. That's your first mission, to remain ungraspable. But more than that, to implant a version of yourself inside their mind that works for you. You don't just want to be unreadable. You want them to misread you on purpose. Machiavelli called it dissimulation. In modern terms, it's strategic misdirection. Let's be clear, this isn't about lying. Lies are noisy. Lies can be traced. No, you don't lie. You imply. You allow them to assume. And then you sit back and watch them build their decisions on false architecture. By the time they realize the floor is hollow, they've already stepped through. The invisible pre-wiring of perception. You walk into a room and let your shoulders slope slightly. You downplay your role. Ask too many questions. Nod like a student. They assume he's not a threat. They decide he doesn't know the rules. They get comfortable. And that is when the infection begins. Because while they lower their guard, you're not relaxing, you're observing. You're letting their ego leak out. You're tracking where they need to be admired, where they crack under contradiction, where they flinch when corrected. By the end of the first hour, you know more about them than they know about you. That is power. The weak man throws his strategy like a punch. You place yours like a scent, invisible, but inescapable. Real-world example. The promotion game. In most corporate hierarchies, promotions aren't given to the most competent. They're given to the most inevitable. You walk into a meeting. Everyone tries to contribute loudly, fighting for the boss's eye. You don't. You contribute once, quietly, but with surgical precision. Your comment shifts the entire conversation. Then you withdraw. You create space around your words. You vanish behind them. Now, the others start looking to you, but they can't figure you out. You've broken the pattern. You're not loud. You're not silent. You're outside the game they're playing, but still shaping the outcome. Soon, the boss isn't thinking he's the most visible. He's thinking he's the most calculated. You didn't ask to be promoted. You engineered expectation. The silent frame. Who controls whom? Understand this. The one who controls expectations doesn't need to control the outcome. He controls how the outcome feels. You delay a response in a conversation by 2 seconds. The other person starts questioning if they misspoke. You show up late to a meeting with no excuse. People begin adjusting their energy to match yours. You sit across from your opponent and listen for 15 minutes without breaking eye contact. They begin to censor themselves. You haven't moved. You haven't spoken much. But you've already taken control. Machiavelli warned men judge more by the eyes than by the hands. For everyone can see how you appear. Few can understand what you are. So what do you appear to be? A man in control, but not by declaration, by implication. The mistake your enemies make. Your opponent tries to expose his intelligence. He quotes facts, flexes knowledge, dominates airtime. That's where you let him talk. You invite his ego forward. You give him space to show off. Because the more he performs, the more predictable he becomes. And when someone is predictable, they are manipulable. You never interrupt. You wait for the moment when his certainty begins to wobble. That's when you ask, "Are you sure about that?" You don't correct him. You just plant a pause, and in that pause, he will replay everything he just said. He will remember your eyes didn't blink. He will remember your silence. And he will wonder, what does he know that I don't? That's how you reverse gravity in a room. Embedding psychological doubt before the start. Your goal is not to win on the field. Your goal is to make them dread stepping onto it. Here's how you do that. Always under-promise in public. Make your skill set seem niche, irrelevant, or unfinished. Let them assume you're still in training. Watch the room before you speak. Let every word you say come after you've absorbed 10x more than everyone else. When you finally speak, it will carry invisible weight. Respond slowly, even to insults. The man who reacts first is already dancing to someone else's music, but the one who waits, he's writing the next verse. Let others define you wrongly. Don't correct their assumptions. Let them live in illusion, because a man confident in his misunderstanding is walking directly into the trap. This is how you prepare your victory before the first move. You become the battlefield, internalizing the strategy. This isn't about paranoia. It's about power. You don't need to dominate everyone. You need to set the terms of interaction. The man who sets the frame dictates the game, and the one who seems harmless is often the one with the deepest control. So let them call you quiet. Let them call you slow. Let them call you average. Smile politely, wait silently, and watch them drift closer to the blade, a blade you never needed to draw, because they carried it themselves, thinking it was a trophy. In war, motion is not progress. It's vulnerability. The man who moves first gives you a map. He reveals his urgency. He uncovers his plan. And in doing so, he becomes readable, predictable, weak. You were taught to take initiative, but you were never taught that reaction is the trap you set for them, not the trap you fall into. The moment your opponent believes he's ahead of you, you let him run. You let him burn his energy. You let him raise his voice, take the spotlight, claim the credit. The illusion of momentum. Why? Because when the weak man feels powerful, he opens every door you need. You've seen it. In workplaces, the man who volunteers for everything burns out by month 4. In dating, the man who overshares first is the one who gets ghosted. In negotiations, the one who talks too much ends up justifying the deal he didn't want. These are not just social errors. These are strategic failures. They move before they map. They show before they study. They react before they anchor. And once you learn to control your stillness, your presence, your pace, your tone, you realize their motion becomes your leverage. Case study: silence. As a weapon. Imagine a performance review. 2 employees sit in the same room. One is talking, explaining, defending, clarifying, proving, begging. The other is still, calm, answers in short phrases. No over-explaining, no apology, no rush. Which one appears in control? It's not the one who has more words. It's the one who has less to lose. You don't speak to impress. You speak to pierce. You let their own words reveal more about them than your words ever will. This is the art of negative space, where the absence of your motion becomes the center of gravity in the room, using their advantage against them. Here's where you go further. You don't just endure their strength. You redirect it. Machiavelli understood this well. In The Prince, he noted that a man who rises too quickly becomes unstable and easier to manipulate through vanity or fear. So when your rival gains power, don't interrupt it, feed it. Let him feel celebrated. Let him feel certain. Let him speak unchecked. Why? Because power, when misused, creates openings, and ego, when inflated, reveals the seams. Your job is to observe how they use that power, and then, when the moment is ripe, pull one thread and let the rest unravel on its own. The art of triggering their impulse. You never provoke directly. You set the conditions that do it for you. You mention a project from last year, one they failed at. You compliment a rival in their presence briefly, then move on. You ask, what made you change your opinion on that, with no tone, no judgment? And then you watch if their voice raises slightly, if their expression twitches, if their answer drags on. They've revealed attachment. And where there's attachment, there's weakness. You don't press it, you record it. You're not here to argue. You're here to notice, because the game isn't played when they speak. It's played when they think they're speaking freely, and you're already predicting what comes next. Dominance through delay. Let's talk timing. In a high-stakes situation, everyone wants to act fast, to resolve, to finalize, to claim victory. That's when you slow down. You say, I'll consider it. Let's pause this until tomorrow. Send it to me. I'll respond later. This does 3 things. It signals control over time. It puts them in a state of waiting, which breeds tension. It removes the power of the present moment from their hands. You delay not to stall, but to shift psychological leverage. By the time you return, the frame has changed. Now they want your response. Now they feel the imbalance. You did nothing, but now you're everything they're waiting for. Pulling strings without being seen. Understand the deepest principle. Visibility is a risk. Every time you show up, you give data. Every time you speak, you give rhythm. Every time you explain, you give shape. Stop giving. Let them guess your motivations. Let them misjudge your values. Let them fill the silence with their own projections. And those projections will become the very walls of the trap. Because when they think they know you, they commit. When they commit, they expose. When they expose, you don't need to attack. You simply point, quietly, strategically, and everyone sees what you saw from the beginning. You were taught to earn respect. That's how they weakened you. You thought status was given for virtue. You believed being liked was the path to being trusted. You assumed admiration was earned by truth. But in reality, status is never granted. It's taken. And respect isn't won, it's engineered. You don't wait to be recognized. You plant seeds that make them assume your power. And you do it by weaponizing 3 human weaknesses: envy, status hunger, and insecurity. Envy, the trigger that operates in silence. You don't need to show off. You just need to imply something they can't quite explain. You wear one item they can't identify. You mention a trip without saying where. You arrive late and say nothing about it. They will fill in the gaps, and in those gaps, they'll project value, because people don't envy truth. They envy ambiguity. When you reveal everything, you're competing. When you reveal nothing, you're above the competition. That's the Machiavellian inversion. Power isn't demonstrated. It's felt silently. And when envy takes root in your opponent's mind, he becomes preoccupied not with winning, but with you. That's when he starts slipping. Status never claimed directly. You never say, "I know more. I've done better. I'm above this." That's the amateur's move. Instead, you create distance. You respond slower. You speak fewer words. You take longer pauses before decisions. These aren't random. They're status signals. The higher your perceived value, the less urgency you must display. Think of royalty. They don't rush. They're waited on. That's what you're cultivating, not arrogance, but psychological altitude. If your opponent starts trying to get through to you, if they start explaining themselves too much, if they start joking to make you laugh, then you've already risen, without lifting a finger. Insecurity, your opponent's invisible leash. Everyone has a mirror they carry. They check it with every word they speak, every glance they throw, every smile they give. And once you see where their mirror is cracked, you own their rhythm. Some examples. If they flinch when interrupted, you gently interrupt. If they talk louder after being ignored, you ignore them again. If they need approval, you give it once, then never again. This isn't cruelty. This is structure. You are building a rhythm they'll eventually dance to, whether they realize it or not. The man who controls another's insecurity controls his speech, his posture, his tone, everything. Machiavelli knew this deeply. Men are driven by 2 principal impulses, either by love or by fear. But fear is more than punishment. It is the fear of not knowing what you think of them. That fear is more powerful than any sword. The strategy of the invisible audience. There's always a third party, even when you're alone. When you dominate a person, someone else is watching. When you undermine a man gently, others begin to whisper. When you carry yourself without explanation, the room fills in your story for you. You're not just battling your opponent. You're controlling the narrative others will tell about him after. That's the invisible stage. You say one sentence that makes your opponent contradict himself. You subtly expose his need for attention. You ask one question that leads him into over-explaining. Then you go quiet. You don't need to humiliate. You just make them doubt. And let the audience, real or imagined, finish your work for you. That's how you destroy reputation without touching it. Dominating space without speaking louder. Most people fight for space with noise. You fight with gravity. You never move fast. You let others adjust around you. You never compete for attention. You let attention notice you. Example. You're in a group. Everyone is talking. You remain silent until someone addresses you directly. When they do, you pause. You glance sideways. Then you say something so brief and unadorned it shifts the room's temperature. That's presence. That's tension. That's command. A man who speaks only when it's costly to speak will always be feared more than the one who never stops talking. The puppeteer strategy. Moving from the back of the room. The most Machiavellian power isn't in the spotlight. It's in the shadows where you shape who gets the spotlight. And when you say something to one person, knowing it will spread to 5, you shift the direction of a conversation by a single question. You recommend someone for a job, knowing they'll implode and make you look wiser. You never force the result. You predict it and position yourself so that the outcome benefits you, no matter what. This is not gambling. This is control of perception, of narrative, of emotion. You're not seen as the attacker. You're the man who always seems to come out clean. That's not luck. That's design. Power isn't noise. It's the absence of vulnerability. The strongest man in the room isn't the one who talks last. He's the one who feels no need to speak. You've spent your life reacting to insults, praise, challenges, rewards. But now you see it. Every reaction was a leash. Every time you had to explain, prove, or clarify, you were surrendering control. The real power is detachment. The ability to walk through any space untouched. The ability to allow judgment without needing to correct it. The ability to let someone hate you and not flinch. That's when your opponent truly breaks. Not when you win. But when he realizes you don't need to. The philosophy of cold dominance. Machiavelli said the vulgar crowd always is taken by appearances, and the world consists chiefly of the vulgar. What does that mean for you? It means you must master the art of appearing powerful without attachment to it. You must perform calm while harboring strategy. You must invite doubt. While speaking in precision, you must be misunderstood and let them choke on their own misinterpretation. You never seek to be admired, because admiration is dependent, and dependency is death. Instead, you build something else, a type of feared respect that doesn't beg for understanding, a presence that doesn't adjust to the environment, it rearranges it. You win before the first word. By now, you understand the layers. You set the tone before the room exists. Your name precedes you not through clout, but through precision in how you operate. You never repeat. You never chase. You arrive slowly, and you depart silently. You let others talk themselves into defeat. Their desire to win gives them away. They race to dominate the field while you build the rules they unknowingly follow. You make their emotions work for you. Envy, anxiety, overconfidence, doubt. You don't fight them. You plant them. You give just enough signal, then vanish. You control without commanding. You don't need a throne. You need a vantage point. And from that point, you pull strings no one sees until it's too late. You are silent where they are loud, still where they are twitching, calculated where they are expressive. In the end, they will accuse you of manipulation, not because you twisted their arm, but because they twisted their own mind trying to understand you. The final image: you don't compete. You create the arena. Imagine a battlefield. All your opponents lined up, voices raised, eyes scanning, each believing they're ready. And then you walk in. No armor, no sword, just stillness. They look at you, expecting movement. You don't give it. They provoke you. You wait. They shout. You breathe. They charge. You step aside. And as they fall, not from your blade, but from imbalance, the crowd turns to you, wondering why you're untouched. That's when they realize you never came to fight. You came to become the ground beneath their collapse. Why silence wins the final war. Words are traceable. Emotions are exploitable. Reactions are controllable. But silence consumes people. Silence forces them to imagine. Silence makes them beg for a signal. Silence turns every strength into confusion. When you live in silence, strategic silence, not passive avoidance, You control space. You leave gaps wide enough for others to fall into, and you never pull them out. They call you distant, unfeeling, unreachable. Let them, because when they can't access your emotions, they can't predict your moves. And when they can't predict your moves, they will never know how to defend against you. The cold truth about winning. They will call you heartless. Let them. They will say you manipulate. Let them. They will say you changed. You did. You shed the armor of approval. You walked out of the cage of politeness. You stopped waiting to be understood and started mastering the parts of yourself no one else had the discipline to sharpen. You no longer seek justice. You create outcomes. You no longer seek validation. You engineer perception. You no longer seek peace. You define tension. And all of it, every cold move, every pause, every delayed reaction was not to become someone else. It was to return to the one thing they feared you'd realize, that you never needed them. The final law: to be untouchable. You must be unneeded when they realize you don't chase. They wonder what you're chasing. When they realize you don't care, they wonder what you know. When they realize you're not affected, they panic because your silence is louder than their authority. That's the highest form of power, not dominance, but absence. The ability to disappear from the game and still win it. The ability to say nothing and still define the outcome. The ability to stand alone and still have others follow, out of confusion, respect, or fear. It doesn't matter which, as long as they follow. Because in the end, the true Machiavellian doesn't force others to obey. He creates a world where no one dares to disobey.